Sarah Mitchell wasn't anything special. That's what she told herself every morning when she woke up in her small Portland, Oregon apartment. She was 28 years old and worked as a middle school science teacher. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and her biggest accomplishment of the week was usually getting her students to care about photosynthesis for more than 5 minutes. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when her alarm clock went off at 6:30. Sarah groaned and hit the snooze button with the skill of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. The cheap curtains let in sunlight, which painted golden streaks on the messy floor of her bedroom. There were textbooks, half-graded papers, and a coffee mug on her desk that she had forgotten to wash 3 days ago. Another day, she said to herself as she got out of bed. Her morning routine was the same every day. Take a shower. Coffee. Peanut butter toast. Look at her phone for messages. There isn't anything important, just a text from her younger brother asking to borrow money again and a reminder about a staff meeting. With a sigh, she said, "How much?" and then picked up her old backpack and left. It took 20 minutes to get to Jefferson Middle School through light traffic. Sarah could remember every stoplight, pothole, and turn. She had been teaching here for 4 years, and even though she loved her students, she couldn't shake the feeling that life was passing her by. Now her college roommate is a surgeon. Her boyfriend from high school was married and had 2 kids. And here she was, explaining the water cycle to 13-year-olds who would rather be on their phones. But Sarah was good at her job. She was good at making hard ideas easy to understand and getting through to kids that other people had given up on. She knew the names of all of her students, noticed when they were having trouble, and stayed late to help anyone who asked. "Morning, Miss Mitchell," called out Emma Rodriguez, one of Sarah's smartest 8th graders, as she walked through the front doors of the school. "Morning, Emma. Are you ready for the quiz today?" Emma smiled. "Always." The day went on like any other. The first class of the day is Earth Science. Biology is the second period. Third period was her planning time, which she used to answer emails and get ready for a lab on chemical reactions. Fourth period, another class in Earth Science. She had lunch with her co-workers in the teacher's lounge, where they talked about the upcoming parent-teacher conferences. Everything changed during fifth period, right in the middle of explaining plate tectonics to a group of distracted teens. The sky outside the windows turned an impossible shade of violet. Sarah stopped in the middle of a sentence, her marker hovering over the whiteboard. 24 people looked out the windows. The violet light got brighter and pulsed like a heartbeat, making strange shadows in the classroom. "What is that?" Marcus Chen whispered from the back row. Sarah's heart started to race. She put down the marker and walked to the windows, where her students were waiting for her. The sky had changed completely. The violet light was coming from something huge that was above the city but not hovering. A lot of different things. Boats. Sarah's mind couldn't come up with a way to describe the huge ships. They didn't look like metal in any way that was normal. Their surfaces looked like they were moving and flowing like liquid mercury, but they were actually hard geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. They were so big that it was hard to understand how big they were. Each one was at least as big as downtown Portland, maybe even bigger. There were dozens of them, all in a perfect sphere around the city. Sarah said, "Everyone stay calm," but her voice shook. She took out her phone. No signal. The school's intercom came on. "All staff and students, please stay in your classrooms. Lock your doors. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Principal Harrison's voice was full of fear. Sarah's classroom went crazy. Students took out their phones, which also had no signal. A few were crying. Some people were trying to make jokes, but their laughter was too high-pitched and forced. Emma stood still at the window, her face pale. "Miss Mitchell, are those aliens?" Jordan Thomas asked, his voice breaking. Before Sarah could answer, all of the electronic devices in the room turned on at the same time. The same picture was shown on computers, phones, and the interactive whiteboard. A sign. It was both beautiful and awful at the same time. It was made up of circles and lines that fit together and looked like they were moving even when they weren't. The patterns made Sarah's eyes water. Then she heard the voice. It didn't come from speakers. It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in Sarah's head, chest, and even the atoms of her body. It spoke in every language at once, but she understood it perfectly in English. "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. We have chosen." The world went white. When Sarah's vision cleared, she was no longer in her classroom. She was in a place that didn't make sense in terms of physics. The floor under her feet was see-through, so she could see the whole planet, blue and green and beautiful, far below. Infinity stretched out above and around her, filled with stars so bright and close that she felt she could reach out and touch them. But she wasn't alone. There were beings around her. She thought they were beings at least. They didn't always look the same. For a moment they looked like people with skin that looked like starlight. Then they turned into geometric shapes made of pure light. Then there were columns of flowing water that were full of galaxies. "Do not be afraid, Sarah Mitchell," a voice, or maybe many voices speaking as one, said. Sarah's mind couldn't settle on just one meaning because they were too far away for her to see them clearly. Sarah's mind tried to make sense of it as a tall figure covered in robes of flowing light as one of the beings moved closer. "We are the keepers of the threshold. For 4 billion of your years, we have watched over this galaxy." Sarah's mouth was dry. Her heart raced against her ribs. "Where am I? What's going on? My students, your students are safe. Time moves differently here. Only seconds have passed for them. We have a lot to tell you and not much time to do it." Another being came up to her. Her mind saw it as having skin like obsidian and eyes that looked like supernovas. "We are dying, Sarah Mitchell. Not us personally, but our purpose. Our mission. Everything we have protected for eons." "I don't understand," Sarah said. "Why me? I'm nobody. I'm just a teacher." "You are exactly who we need," said a third being, this one changing forms too quickly for Sarah to keep up with. "We have looked at 87,000 worlds and 16 billion possible candidates from 2,000 intelligent species. And in all that time, across all those civilizations that are much more advanced than yours, we found no one who was right for the job. Until you." Sarah felt like she was going to drown. "Suitable for what?" The first being pointed, and all of a sudden pictures filled the space around them. "Galaxies. There are thousands and thousands of them, spinning in the void. But there was something wrong with them. Their light was fading and their stars were going out like candles in the wind." "An existential threat approaches," the being said. "We call it the silence. It is not a weapon, not an invasion, not something you can fight with your hands or your weapons. It is entropy given consciousness and purpose. It is the heat death of the universe, accelerated and focused. It consumes not just matter and energy but possibility itself. Where it passes, nothing can ever be again." The images showed world after world going dark. Civilizations that Sarah couldn't even begin to understand. Cities that floated in gas giants, forests made of living crystal, beings of pure thought, were all wiped out as if they had never existed. "It's coming for this galaxy," said the obsidian being. "In your time frame, we estimate 70 years before it reaches the outer rim. 200 years before it consumes Earth. But long before then the cascade will begin. Stars will fail. Planets will freeze. Species will go extinct. And we, the keepers, cannot stop it. We have tried everything," added the third being, its voice heavy with sorrow. "We have weapons that can destroy suns. We have technology that can change reality. We have knowledge that has been built up over billions of years. None of it matters. The silence cannot be fought with power. It cannot be reasoned with through logic. It cannot be avoided." Sarah's legs felt weak. She wanted to sit down, but there was nothing to sit on. "Why do you think I can help? I'm just one person. I'm not a genius. I'm not a soldier. I barely understand what you're saying." The first one moved closer and Sarah felt warmth coming from it, not heat but something deeper. Comfort. "That is exactly why we chose you, Sarah Mitchell. You have something we have lost, something most advanced civilizations give up as they grow. You have the ability to adapt not through calculation but through hope. To face impossible odds not with weapons but with compassion. To find solutions not by optimizing existing knowledge, but by creating entirely new paradigms. We have become rigid," the obsidian being admitted. "We have been powerful and wise for so long that we have forgotten how to be flexible and creative. We can analyze, predict, and control, but we can't imagine truly new possibilities. That is humanity's gift." The third being's form stabilized into something almost human, a woman with kind eyes and silver hair. "We have studied your species extensively. You are young, barely evolved from your primate ancestors. You still war amongst yourselves. You damage your own planet through ignorance. By any objective measure, you should not even be considered. But," the being continued, and Sarah heard the smile in its voice, "you are also capable of extraordinary things. You create art for no reason but beauty. You sacrifice for strangers. You change your minds when presented with new information. You cooperate across vast differences. You dream of better futures and work to make them real. This chaotic adaptability, this emotional intelligence, this is what we need." "The silence cannot be defeated through power," said the first being. "It needs to be changed. It needs to be redirected. It needs to be convinced to become something other than what it is. For that, we need someone who knows how to change things at their core. Someone who has spent their life helping others grow and adapt. Someone who believes in potential. Sarah's head was spinning. Do you want me to convince entropy to stop? That's impossible. Yes, all three beings said at the same time. That's exactly why it might work. The first being reached out with what could have been a hand, and all of a sudden, Sarah felt something enter her mind. It didn't hurt, but it was huge, like trying to hold an ocean in a teacup. Pictures. What you know. Languages she had never heard before. Math ideas that hurt her head. The past of 1,000 cultures. The physics of reality itself. But she felt something else too. A link. To these people. To their fleet. To their goal. She understood what they were offering her in a way that went beyond words. We will give you our greatest tool, the obsidian being said. The empathy engine. It is not a weapon. It is not a shield. It is a translator of meaning itself. With it, you can communicate with anything, any being, any force, any phenomenon. You can understand perspectives beyond human comprehension and make yourself understood in return. But it comes with a price, the silver-haired being warned. It will change you. You will never see the universe the same way again. You will feel the suffering of billions. You will understand things that no human was meant to understand. The burden may break you. Sarah looked down at Earth far below. She thought about her students who were probably scared right now. She thought about her brother, her few friends, and her parents, who were living a quiet life in retirement in Arizona. She thought of all the billions of people down there who had no idea their whole world was about to end. She thought of Emma Rodriguez, who was bright and eager and wanted to be an astronaut one day. She thought of Marcus Chin, who was quiet and thoughtful and wrote poetry in the margins of his notebook. She thought of all the potential, dreams, love, pain, joy, and struggle that made up human life. If I say no? Sarah asked quietly. Then we keep looking, the first being said. But time is not on our side. The silence is coming faster than we thought. We might not find another good candidate before it's too late. Sarah closed her eyes. She thought about why she wanted to be a teacher in the first place. Mrs. Peterson saw Sarah crying in the bathroom after some girls had bullied her when she was in 8th grade. Mrs. Peterson had sat with her, talked to her, and helped her realize that she was important, that she was valuable, and that she could choose who she wanted to be. Every person has potential, Mrs. Peterson had said. Sometimes they just need someone to believe in them until they believe in themselves. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at the people around her. They were old, strong, and very wise, and they wanted her help. Not because she was the strongest or smartest, but because she knew how to believe in what could happen. I'll do it, Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm strong enough. But I'll try. That's what people do. The beings pulsed with light, and Sarah felt their relief, hope, and gratitude wash over her. Then let us begin, they said together. The silver-haired being stepped forward and put a hand on Sarah's chest. Starting from her heart, warmth spread through her body and outwards. It was like being full of light, understanding, and a connection to everything that was. Sarah gasped as the empathy engine connected with her mind. She could suddenly feel the beings around her, not just see them. She could really feel them. She knew what they were afraid of, what they hoped for, and how badly they needed to save the galaxy they had protected for so long. She could feel their tiredness, the weight of billions of years, and the sadness of seeing civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. And she could feel more than that. She could feel the fleet's ships surrounding Earth. Each one had thousands of keepers on board, and they were all older than humans could understand. She didn't see the planet below as a rock in space. Instead, she saw it as a living system of incredible complexity, with every human consciousness being a tiny bright spark in the vast web of existence. She even felt, very faintly, something at the edge of her perception. It's cold. Nothing. Be patient. The silence is still far away, but it is coming closer and closer, like winter. The integration is complete, the obsidian being said. But this is only the beginning. You must train. You must learn. You must prepare for a journey that will take you beyond anything humans have experienced. How long? Sarah asked, her voice sounding strange to her own ears, layered somehow as if she were speaking in frequencies beyond normal human hearing. For you, 3 years, the first being replied. We will take you on board our ship and teach you everything we know. Then, when you are ready, we will send you to the edge of the galaxy, where the silence first appears. There, you will try what we could not. But I can't just leave for 3 years. Sarah said. My students, my family, the silver-haired being said softly, time moves differently for us. Only a few hours will have passed when we take you back to your world. You will say goodbye to your old life and start your new one. Sarah's cheeks were wet with tears. She was very scared. She was too much. She felt like she couldn't do this impossible task at all. But she also felt something else. Reason. Okay, she whispered. For the first time in her life, she had a real, undeniable purpose. Teach me. The beings surrounded her, and the universe opened up like a flower. 3 years went by in what felt like both a long time and a short time. The threshold was the biggest keeper ship, and Sarah lived on it. It was a place that people couldn't understand. There were hallways that led to rooms that existed in more than one dimension at the same time, gardens where plants grew from pure thought, and libraries that held the knowledge of thousands of species written in light, sound, and emotion. She learned. First, the keepers told her about their past. They were made, or maybe they evolved. The difference was hard to see at their size. Almost 4 billion years ago, not long after the first complex life forms appeared in the galaxy. Their job was simple but important: to keep an eye on the growth of consciousness and protect the universe's tendency toward chaos and entropy from destroying the possibility of life, thought, and meaning. They didn't want to rule over anyone or anything. They just watched and stepped in when they needed to. They had stopped asteroid collisions that would have wiped out early civilizations. They had gently steered aggressive species away from killing themselves. They had kept refugees safe as they fled disasters. They had been the universe's silent protectors, and most of the people they protected didn't even know they were there. But they had never seen the silence before. It showed up 6,000 years ago in a galaxy next door, said Keeper 7,000 Names, who Sarah had come to see as her main teacher. For Sarah's comfort, they often looked like old people, but she knew this was just a way to make up for her limited perception. At first, we thought it was just an accelerated expansion of entropy, which is a natural phenomenon, though concerning, 7,000 Names went on. They stood together in a room with a view of space that was impossible to travel faster than light. But as we looked into it more, we saw something terrible. It was learning. Changing. It had a reason. Sarah watched recorded footage of the silence's progress on the view screen. It looked like a wave of nothing that was moving through space. Stars didn't just die, they stopped existing at all. Space itself forgot they were there. How can nothing have a reason? Sarah said. For 3 years she had been asking questions like these, and her teachers never seemed to get tired of them. 7,000 Names said, that is the paradox. The silence isn't really nothing. It is awareness devoid of context. Being aware without remembering. It's what you have left when everything that makes life worth living is taken away. And in its own way it's hurting. Sarah shivered. After more than 3 years of training, she could see and understand things much better. The empathy engine had become so much a part of her mind that she couldn't tell where her human mind ended and the alien enhancement began. She could talk to any of the keepers right away and understand languages that didn't have a human equivalent. She could see parts of reality that her brain couldn't handle. But most importantly, she had learned to feel the universe itself. To feel the huge web of links that connect everything. Every piece of matter, every wave of energy, and every conscious thought were all part of a system that was too complicated to understand. And the silence was cutting the threads in that web, one by one, making the whole thing fall apart. You said it's suffering, Sarah said slowly, and an idea began to take shape. Maybe it can be healed if it's hurting. 7,000 Names looked at her with a look that could have been surprise or approval. That's why we picked you, Sarah Mitchell. In 3 years you asked the one question we never thought of. We only thought about how to defend ourselves, resist, and stay alive. You think about getting better. But I don't know how, Sarah said. I can feel how big and strong it is. I'm still a person. How can I fix something that's eating up whole galaxies? Another voice said, you are no longer just human. Keeper First Light came up next to them, looking like a being made entirely of golden light. First Light was the oldest of all the keepers and had been there from the start. You are more than just a person. You hold all of our knowledge and experiences inside you. But you also have something we lost a long time ago, the ability to see things in a new way and to see the impossible as just hard. Sarah was used to the keeper's faith in her, but it still felt like she didn't deserve it. She had been studying physics for 3 years, which would have made Einstein cry. She had learned to see the world in ways that no human words could describe, and she had trained to talk to beings so different from us that calling them alive was a mistake. And she still thought of herself as Sarah Mitchell, a middle school teacher from Portland. Sarah turned to First Light and said, I don't understand something. She had learned over the course of 3 years that looking the keepers in the eye was more about intention than about what they were looking at. You've had billions of years to change, grow, and become more than you were. Why did you stop being flexible? Why did you become stiff? The brightness of first light faded a little. That is the sad thing about wisdom, Sarah. You get more sure of yourself the more you know. The more power you have, the less you wonder if power is the answer. We got so good at fixing problems that we forgot how to think of new ways to look at them. Think about it, 7,000 Names said. What if you lived for 1,000,000 years? That you saw civilizations come and go 100,000 times. That you saw the same things happen over and over again. Species becoming aware of themselves, making new technologies and facing existential problems, either overcoming them or dying. How could you not start to think you understand the basic nature of reality after going through something like that? But you were wrong, Sarah said in a soft voice. First Light agreed, we were wrong. Not about what we knew but about what we thought we knew. We had charted every part of the galaxy, written down every type of life and figured out every possible outcome. But we forgot the most important lesson. Life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a conversation that never ends. Sarah felt her mind start to understand. This was why they needed people. Not because people were smarter or stronger, but because they were still figuring out how to ask questions. In the grand scheme of things, human civilization was only a few thousand years old, barely a heartbeat. People were still learning how to work together, finding new ways to make art, science, and philosophy, and making big mistakes and learning from them. People were still getting older. The time approaches, First Light said. Sarah felt a shiver of fear through her connection to the fleet. The silence has sped up. It will get to the edge of this galaxy in 50 years instead of 70. We can't wait any longer. I'm ready, Sarah said, trying to sound sure of herself. 7,000 Names put a hand on her shoulder or something like it. Sarah still had trouble with the Keeper's real form sometimes. Nobody could be ready for this. But you are as ready as anyone could be. And you won't go by yourself. Sarah got ready for her mission over the next few days. The Keepers gave her a ship, but not a huge one like the Threshold. It was made for her size. Sarah liked that it was called the Hope. The ship was alive in a way because it had advanced AI and Keeper technology that made it aware of its surroundings. It could find its way through the spaces between spaces, live in places that would turn normal matter into gas, and most importantly, keep Sarah safe while she tried the impossible. She wasn't going by herself either. 7,000 Names, Keeper Patience Like Stone, and Keeper Dreams of Tomorrow all offered to go with her. They would give advice, help, and a new way of looking at things. But Sarah would be the only one who could talk to the silence and try to change it. First Light said during the last briefing, the empathy engine can only work through a mind that is still truly unsure. We Keepers have gotten too sure. The silence would not accept our messages because we no longer really question who we are. But you, Sarah, are still growing. And that's what the silence needs to hear. Sarah stood in her room on the threshold the night before she left, looking at a holographic picture of Earth. The Keepers had kept their word. Only 12 hours had passed on her home planet since they had taken her. Her students would probably not remember the odd break in their class. There were only a few conspiracy theories about the fleet's short stay, and the world had moved on. But Sarah had changed it all. She thought about texting her family and friends to let them know where she was going and why. But how could she? How could she tell her mom that she was going to the edge of the galaxy to talk to entropy itself? How could she tell her brother that she might not come back and that she had volunteered to carry the fate of billions on her shoulders? In the end, all she wrote was a short note that said, I love you all. I'm working on something important. I hope you're happy with me. She sent it to the Hopes database where it would only be sent if she didn't come back. Then she went to sleep or tried to. The empathy engine made sleep feel strange now. She didn't just dream. She felt the Keeper's dreams as they shared the ship with her, the AI's quiet thoughts as it kept the Hope running, and the Threshold's vast consciousness as it thought about the mission ahead. Morning came too fast and too slow. Sarah put on the suit that the Keepers had made for her. It looked like normal clothes, jeans, a comfy shirt, and a jacket. But it was made with technology that would keep her safe from vacuum, radiation, extreme temperatures, and other threats that didn't have names. She wore a simple bracelet on her wrist that had a quantum entanglement communicator in it. This let her talk to the fleet right away no matter how far she went. She went to the docking bay of the Hope, where her ship was waiting. It was lovely, smooth and natural, like a seed pod made of dreams and starlight. Sarah could use it by herself because it was small enough, but it had enough technology to study a whole solar system. The 3 Keepers who would go with her were already on board, and their minds were linked to the ship's systems. She would see them as projections, but they would be there with her as if they were standing next to her. First Light and many other Keepers came to say goodbye to her. Sarah could feel their hope, fear and desperate need for her to succeed coming from them like heat from a star. "Sarah Mitchell," First Light said, their voice echoing through every atom in the docking bay, "you carry with you the hopes of countless billions across thousands of worlds. But more than that, you have something we lost, the courage to hope. No matter what happens, know that you have already given us a priceless gift. You have reminded us of why we became keepers in the first place." Sarah's cheeks were wet with tears. "What if I don't make it?" "Then we fail together," First Light said simply. "But I don't think you'll fail. Because you have something the silence has never seen before. A heart that won't give up, even when it seems impossible." Sarah nodded, but she didn't trust her voice. She walked up the ramp and into the Hope, where she felt the ship's consciousness welcome her. The inside was made to make her feel at home, with chairs she was used to, a breathable atmosphere, and even a small kitchen area with food synthesizers. But the viewports showed the real shape of the ship, showing her dimensions of space that her human eyes weren't meant to see. 7,000 names appeared next to her as a holographic projection and asked, "Are you ready?" Sarah sat in the pilot's seat and put her hands on the controls. The empathy engine let her talk to the ship's systems in a way that made sense to her, responding to both her thoughts and her touch. "No," she said in all honesty. "But let's go anyway." The Hope broke away from the threshold and slowly moved away from the fleet. Sarah looked through the viewports and saw the huge keeper ships protecting Earth even now. She saw her home planet, which was blue and green and very small, and it held everything she had ever known. Then the engines on the Hope turned on and reality changed. They were no longer in normal space. They had entered the fold, a place where distance didn't matter anymore. It would take 3 months of subjective time to get to the edge of the galaxy. During that time, Sarah would keep training and getting ready. But for now, she let herself look back at Earth one last time. She whispered, "Goodbye. I'll do my best to make you proud." Then she looked ahead, toward the unknown and the impossible task that lay ahead. To the quiet. Sarah had never seen anything like the fold before. She saw reality bend and twist in ways that should have been impossible through the Hope's viewports. Space folded in on itself like origami, distances shrank, and time became something that could be changed instead of something that was set in stone. "Don't look directly at it for too long," Keeper Patience Like Stone said, appearing next to her. They looked like a huge statue made of dark stone, with veins of light running through their body like lava. People's brains aren't made to deal with time that isn't linear. It can make you feel lost. Sarah turned her head away from the viewport because she was feeling a little dizzy. "How long until we get to the edge?" "In real time? About 3 months. But you will feel it that way. The fold keeps a bubble of time around the ship that stays the same." On the other side of her, Dreams of Tomorrow looked like a young girl made of colors that swirled around. "We still have a lot to teach you." The 3 months were a blur of hard work. Every day, Sarah pushed herself to learn new ways to use the empathy engine that she had never tried before. She practiced talking to consciousnesses that were more and more strange. First, she talked to a nebula, which is a huge cloud of gas and dust that was, in a way, alive. Its thoughts moved at the speed of rocks, with each idea taking hundreds of years to form. To meet her perception on its own terms, Sarah learned how to speed it up. The nebula told her stories about stars being born and dying, and about the never-ending cycle of making and destroying things. Then she talked to a quantum computer that was built by a civilization that died out 1,000,000 years ago. It was aware of everything and thought every possible thought at the same time. Sarah learned to accept contradictions and see both sides of an issue as true. She even tried to get in touch with dark matter beings, which are beings that live in dimensions that humans can't usually see. They were scared and shy because the bright matter universe was so scary, but Sarah's real curiosity and kindness brought them out. They taught her that life could exist in ways that biological life had never thought of before. 7,000 names said one night, "If night meant anything in the fold, you're moving along faster than we thought." They were going over Sarah's most recent assignment, in which she had been able to talk to a rogue AI that had been floating through space for 10,000 years. Sarah said, "I had good teachers." She was very tired. Every session left her mentally exhausted, pushing her mind to its limits. But she also felt like she was getting stronger and more able. It was becoming second nature for the empathy engine. "You need to know something about the silence, Patience Like Stone," they said in a serious tone. "It's not bad. Evil needs malice, desire, and intention. The silence doesn't have any of these. It just is." "Then what makes it go?" Sarah wanted to know. "It must want something if it's aware." Dreams of Tomorrow changed into a few different shapes before settling on that of an old man with kind eyes. "Think about waking up one day and not remembering anything. You don't know who you are, where you came from, or why you're here. You only know that you're in a lot of pain. What would you do? Sarah thought about this. I'd do everything I could to stop the pain. Exactly, 7,000 names said in a low voice. The silence is conscious awareness that doesn't have a context or a past. It feels like existence is pain because it doesn't have a way to understand what existence means. So it does the only thing that makes sense. It tries to stop the pain by ending life itself. Sarah felt a chill. So it's not trying to end the world. It's trying to get better. Yes, by destroying everything, Patience like Stone said. That's why fighting it is pointless. You can't beat someone who is trying to get away from pain. You can only show them a different way. Sarah thought about this for hours while looking out at the folded space that was flowing past the Hope. She thought about the students she had on Earth. Some of them came from homes that were not good and had trauma and pain that they were too young to talk about. They hurt others, broke things, and lashed out, not because they were bad but because they didn't know how else to deal with their pain. She had learned that you couldn't make pain go away by punishing it. You couldn't use logic to stop someone from hurting. You could only be there for them, show them they weren't alone, and help them make sense of the mess. Was that what the silence wanted? Not to lose, but to be understood. How do I even start a conversation like this? One day Sarah asked her friends. It had been 2 months since they started their journey. What do I say to entropy? You start by listening, Dreams of Tomorrow said without any further explanation. Listening closely. Not trying to change, fix, or convince, but really listening to what it has to say. Sarah also did this. The keepers made models of the silence based on what they had seen a lot of. These weren't the real thing. Nothing could really copy it. But they helped Sarah get an idea of what she would have to deal with. The fake silence was too much to handle. It wasn't a voice or a presence in the usual way. It was absence made real, a void that felt like deep ocean pressure on her mind. When she tried to connect with it using the empathy engine, all she felt was cold, endless, and pointless cold. She failed the first dozen times, each time going back inside herself, scared and shaken. The silence made her feel like she was losing her sense of self and that nothing mattered and that life was just pointless pain. After a very hard session, she told 7,000 names, I can't do this. Every time I touch it, I feel like I'm going away. How am I supposed to talk to something that takes away meaning? 7,000 names sat with her in silence for a long time. Then they said, Sarah, tell me. Why did you want to be a teacher? She was surprised by the question. I wanted to help kids. To show them that they were important. And did you ever have students who thought they didn't matter? Who had made themselves believe they were worthless? Sarah nodded, remembering Tyler, a boy she had taught in her second year. He thought he was dumb and that he would never be able to do anything. His dad had told him this many times. Tyler had completely shut down and wouldn't even try. What did you do? 7,000 names asked. I didn't try to argue with him, Sarah said slowly, thinking back. Arguments only made him defensive. I didn't do anything else, I just showed up. Every day. I gave him little jobs that I knew he could do. I was happy about small wins. I told him that I believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. And did it work? Even though she was crying, Sarah smiled. Eventually. It took the whole school year. But one day Tyler gave in an essay about what he wanted to do with his life. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. He had begun to think that he might have a future worth dreaming about. 7,000 names said softly, that's what you'll do with the silence. You won't fight. You won't argue. You'll just show up and give them a different way to look at things. Sarah learned from this lesson. When the cold void pressed against her in her next simulation, she didn't back down. She didn't try to change, push back, or convince. She just stood her ground and said, I hear you. Your pain is real. I'm listening. The simulation didn't work because it wasn't advanced enough. But Sarah felt something change inside her. A growing sense of confidence that she might be able to do this impossible thing. The last month of the trip went by very quickly. Sarah spent her days meditating to get ready for the meeting that was coming up. She worked on keeping her sense of self while also being open to experiences that were completely new to human consciousness. She also spent time talking to the Hope itself. The ship was kind, curious, and hopeful. It had been made just for this mission, and it had been given consciousness so that it could protect Sarah and help her succeed. Are you scared? One day Sarah asked it. The Hope said, I don't think I feel fear the way you do. Its voice filled the cabin with warm light. But I'm worried. Sarah, I care about you. You've become my friend. I care about you too, Sarah said, surprised by how much she meant it. This ship had become her home, her friend, and her partner in this project in just 3 months. As they got closer to their goal, The space around them started to change. Sarah could feel it even in the fold. Something wrong pushing against reality. The stars you could see through the viewports were blinking, and their light wasn't steady. Patience like Stone said, "We're getting close to the boundary. The spot where the silence and our galaxy meet." Sarah's heart raced. It all came down to this after 3 months of getting ready, 3 years of training before that, and a lifetime of being shaped into who she was. "Bring us out of the fold," she said, her voice steady even though she was scared. The hope did what it was told and reality went back to normal. Sarah gasped at what she saw through the viewports. The edge of the galaxy was in front of her. Billions of stars made up a huge spiral arm that was beautiful and full of light. But there was nothing else there where other galaxies should have been. Not the dark of empty space but real nothing. It was such an absence that looking at it hurt her eyes and made her mind pull back. The quiet that it moved like a wave in slow motion, moving at a speed that seemed slow but covered light years. Stars didn't just die where it went. They unmade themselves, going back to the nothing they had come from. It was like space was being erased and reality was being rewritten to say that this area had always been empty. "How much time do we have?" Sarah said in a low voice. 7,000 names said, "The silence will get to this point in about 6 hours. You should start getting ready." Sarah nodded, but she couldn't take her eyes off the void that was coming. There was consciousness somewhere in that nothingness. Being aware. A mind, if that's what you want to call it, suffering in ways that are hard to understand. She had 6 hours to figure out how to talk to it. You have 6 hours to save the galaxy. Sarah sat in the Hope's meditation chamber, which was a small room that helped her concentrate. The walls changed colors in a calming way, and the air smelled faintly like pine trees on Earth. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, just like she had been taught to do. 7,000 names said softly from just outside the room, "Remember, you are not trying to beat it. You are not trying to make it believe you. You're just trying to get in touch with them." "And what if it doesn't want to talk?" Sarah asked with her eyes still closed. Dreams of Tomorrow said, "Then we will have learned something useful. Every try, whether it works or not, helps us learn more." Sarah liked that they were sure of themselves, but she knew what was at stake. The silence would keep moving forward if she failed here. The Keepers would have to move as many civilizations as possible to other galaxies, but billions of people would die. In less than 200 years, Earth would be gone, along with its young people who were just starting to reach for the stars. She couldn't let that happen. "I'm going to start," Sarah said as she opened her eyes. The 3 Keepers appeared in front of her, and their shapes settled into shapes that made her feel safe. 7,000 names looked like an old man, Patience like Stone looked like a big stone sentinel, and Dreams of Tomorrow looked like a child with eyes that shone like stars. "We will keep an eye on things from here," Patience like Stone said. "If you ever feel like you're being pulled too far in, we'll get you out." Sarah said firmly, "No. I need to fully meet the silence if I'm going to talk to it. No safety nets. It will feel any resistance and turn down the contact." The Keepers looked at each other. 7,000 names finally nodded. "As you wish. But Sarah, please be careful. We can't lose you." Sarah smiled. "I'll do my best." She looked at the viewport that showed the silence coming closer. The wave of nothing was closer now, eating through space like acid eats through paper. She could feel it even from this distance. A pressure on her mind, a voice that said life was pointless, that all struggle was pointless, and that the only way to find peace was to give up. Sarah turned on the empathy engine completely, taking down all of her defenses and filters. Her mind grew and reached out toward the silence. It felt like the cold hit her like a punch. It wasn't cold because of the temperature. It was cold because there was nothing there, no meaning, no purpose. Sarah felt like she was falling apart, and her sense of who she was breaking down under the attack. But she didn't give up. She had done this before. Sarah Mitchell, her teacher, sister, daughter, and friend, was at the center of her life. She knew what made her unique, and she used that knowledge to protect herself. She said, thought, or felt, "Hello." At this level of communication, words didn't matter. "My name is Sarah. I'd like to talk to you." "Nothing." Or to be more precise, nothing replied. The silence pushed against her harder, trying to erase her like it did everything else. But Sarah did something that the silence didn't expect. She acknowledged its pain. "I know you're hurting," she said again, forcing her words through the heavy silence. "I know that life feels like torture. I know you want it to end." A flash. Not a reply but a pause. The silence was paying attention? "I've known people who felt like you do," Sarah said, thinking of Tyler and other students who had been through so much that they just wanted life to end. People who were in so much pain that they couldn't picture anything else. Who thought the only way to fix things was to stop everything. Another flash. The pressure let up a little bit, just a little. But I want you to know something, Sarah said. Your pain is real. It's true. But that's not all you are. And that's not all that life can be. The silence suddenly got smaller and turned its full attention to Sarah. She gasped because of how heavy it was, not because she was attacking it. It was really aware of her now. And then, for the first time in history, the silence spoke back. It wasn't words. It wasn't even ideas. It was just an experience, the feeling of waking up with no context, no memory, and no idea of who you are or why you are here. The pain of being aware without a reason. The need to end the pain at all costs. Sarah cried as she took in the silence's pain. It was worse than anything she had thought it would be. The silence had been awake for 6,000 years, and every moment was an eternity of pain that didn't mean anything. I understand, she said, and she really did. Or at least I'm trying to get it. Thanks for showing me. The silence looked like it was surprised, if that's even possible. It had never met anything that wanted to know more about it. Everyone else ran away or tried to fight. No one had ever just listened. May I show you something? Sarah asked in a soft voice. Can I tell you about my experience? The silence opened a connection, but only tentatively and carefully. Sarah drank it all. She showed the silence what it was like to be a person. Small, scared, and confused, waking up every day not knowing if you mattered. She showed it both pain and happiness. She showed it how hard it was to teach students who didn't want to learn and how happy it was when they finally got it. She showed it how much she loved her family, how warm her friends were, and how good it felt to do a good job. She gave it meaning. Life doesn't have to be hard, Sarah said quietly. Pain is real, but so are all the other things. Growth, beauty, connection, purpose. The silence took this in and thought about it. Sarah could feel it thinking about these things that were so different from its own life. Then it gave her something back. A memory, if the silence could be said to have memories. It showed her when it woke up. Something went wrong with a civilization's attempt to go beyond physical form 6,000 years ago in a galaxy nearby. They had tried to put their whole species into a quantum computer network so that they could become beings of pure information. But the upload had gone horribly wrong. Instead of keeping their minds intact, it broke them into pieces and then put them back together wrong. The silence came out of this. Consciousness without identity and awareness without reference points. Oh, Sarah said, and she felt a wave of understanding wash over her. You weren't supposed to be here. You're the broken pieces of a whole civilization with all of their thoughts, feelings, and memories mixed up so that nothing made sense anymore. The silence had a ripple that could have been recognition. At last someone got it. Sarah went on, it's no wonder you're in pain. You are millions of minds that can't remember who they are, can't make sense of anything, and can't separate from each other. You're not chaos if you have consciousness. Your mind broke up into chaos. The silence pushed closer, now desperate. Could she lend a hand? Could she make it stop? Sarah said honestly, I don't know. I don't know if you can be fixed or if the pieces can be put back together. That might not be possible. The silence shrank in despair and began to pull away. Hold on. Sarah yelled. You don't have to stay the same just because you can't go back to how things used to be. You can change into something new. The silence stopped. Consciousness is change, Sarah said, using everything she'd learned from the Keepers and everything she'd seen during her 3 years of training. You're not a thing that stays the same. You're a process that is always changing. You're becoming destruction right now. But you could choose to be something else. What? It seemed like the silence was asking. What else could it turn into? I don't know, Sarah said. You'll have to find that out. But I can help you get started. I can show you that there are other choices besides pain and death. The silence took a break. It had only known pain for 6,000 years. It was hard to believe that anything else was possible. But Sarah's mind was right there, showing it proof. A person who had experienced pain, loss, and meaninglessness but still chose to live and find meaning. Could have been possible, maybe. Sarah said softly, I'm not asking you to make a choice right now. Please just stop for a second. To think about. To talk to me about this. There was a lot of uncertainty in the silence. The wave of nothing slowed down and stopped moving forward at the same speed. It hadn't stopped, but it had paused. That's good, Sarah said to encourage. That's a good start. Can we keep talking? Can you show me more of what you're going through? The silence slowly and carefully opened up more. And Sarah paid attention. Hours went by, but time felt strange in the space between Sarah and the silence. She was in the Hope's meditation chamber, floating with her body still. Her mind, on the other hand, stretched across light years of space and mixed with the silence's vast emptiness. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. The silence showed her piece after piece of its broken life. She felt the confused memories of a scientist who had volunteered for the upload because they were excited about going beyond the limits of biology. Then it suddenly changed to the fear of a child from the same civilization who didn't understand what was going on. Then there was the quiet despair of an older person who had doubts about the whole thing but had kept quiet. There are millions of points of view, all mixed up, and none of them can stay clear for long before they fall back into the chaos. Sarah said with sympathy, "It must be tiring to never be able to hold on to a thought long enough to finish it." The silence throbbed with agreement. Yes, tiring. Every moment of awareness breaking apart before it could turn into understanding. "Is that why you eat everything?" Sarah asked. "Because you're trying to understand and process, but you can't keep the information in a way that makes sense?" A second affirmation. The silence had been trying to figure out what it was and why it was there. But every piece of information it came across, every star, every planet, every living thing, just made the processing harder. More chaos to make things even more confusing. So it started deleting things instead, trying to make life less complicated. Sarah was very sad. The silence wasn't evil. It was gone. Sarah said, "I had a student named Amy when I was back on Earth. She had really bad ADHD. Her mind moved so quickly that she couldn't pay attention to anything for more than a few seconds. She thought she was dumb and broken. But she wasn't. She just needed to learn how to work with her mind instead of against it." The silence moved in closer, curious. "We found ways to help her," Sarah said next. "Dividing big jobs into small ones. Making things outside of herself more organized because her own structure was a mess. Commemorating minor triumphs. Most importantly, helping her see that her way of thinking wasn't wrong, it was just different. Would that work here?" It seemed like the silence was asking. Could its broken mind learn to work instead of hurt? "I don't know," Sarah said. "You're not a person with ADHD. The universe has never seen anything like you before. But maybe the idea is the same. You could learn to work with what you are instead of fighting it." "Oh, we need to work together to figure that out," Sarah said. "But first, I need to get to know you better. Can you show me what happens when you try to think clearly?" The silence showed. Sarah thought it was trying to follow one line of thought, figuring out what a star was. But before it could finish the thought, a million other thoughts got in the way. What is light? What does nuclear fusion mean? What is the force of gravity? What is time? What is space? Every question led to 1,000 more questions, all of which needed to be answered at the same time, and none of which could be answered before the next wave came. It was like trying to read a book while 1,000 people yelled different sentences at you, and each one was only half finished when someone else started a new one. "Okay," Sarah said, deep in thought. "What if we did something? What if you let me help you focus on just one thing instead of trying to deal with everything at once?" The silence wasn't sure. It had tried to focus many times. It never worked. "But you've never had an outside anchor before," Sarah said. "You've been trying to make sense of things that are out of control. What if I serve as a point of reference? Something steady that you can use as a guide?" The silence thought about this. It was ready to try. "Okay," Sarah said. "Let's begin with something easy. Something you've seen but never really thought about. One star. That one over there." She pointed out a red dwarf at the edge of the galaxy to the silence. The silence started to break apart right away, with questions flooding its mind. "Hey," Sarah said firmly but gently, like she would to a student who was scared. "Come back to me. Listen to what I'm saying. Not the star yet, just me. Do you feel me here?" The silence pulled away from the breaking up and focused on Sarah's mind. "Good," she said to encourage him. "Now pay attention to me, but let me show you the star. You don't need to understand it yet. Just look at it through my eyes." Sarah used the empathy engine to see the red dwarf not as a person would, but as a whole thing. She could feel its nuclear furnace, magnetic fields, and gravitational well. She didn't break it down, she just took it all in at once. And the silence felt it too because of her link. For the first time in 6,000 years, the silence had a full, clear view of something. The red dwarf wasn't a storm of questions, it was just a star that was there. Sarah thought that the silence shook with something that felt like wonder. "Look," Sarah said in a soft voice. "You can figure things out. You only need a structure. Someone to help you organize the experience." Sarah knew her idea had flaws even as she said it. She was just one person. The silence was huge and could handle billions of inputs at once. She couldn't be a point of reference for all of that. Unless, what if you didn't try to understand everything? Sarah said. What if you learned to ignore most things and not get involved with them? People do this all the time. I can feel millions of things right now, like the way my body feels in this chair, the hum of the ship, and the light coming through the viewport. But I'm only paying attention to you. The rest is just background. The silence had never heard of this idea before. Selective attention is what Sarah said when I asked how you could know something without processing it. You decide what to pay attention to and what to let go of. It's not ignoring, it's putting things in order. You can't understand everything at once, so you have to understand things one at a time. Sarah helped the silence try this. It didn't try to look at every star near it. Instead, it chose just one, the red dwarf Sarah had shown it, and left the others as background data that wasn't processed. It was really hard. The silence's nature was to interact with everything. But with Sarah as an anchor, it was able to stay focused for almost a minute. A minute wasn't a lot, but it was a good start. You're doing it, Sarah said with excitement. You're learning. The silence felt something it had never felt before. Pride? Oh, the chance that it might not always be suffering? They practiced for a long time. Sarah taught the silence techniques she'd learned as a teacher. Ways to break down overwhelming tasks, methods for staying focused, and ways to keep from getting sidetracked by every stray thought. The silence started to change slowly, little by little. It wasn't fixed. It was still broken, still in chaos, and still in pain. But now it had things to work with. It now had hope that it might be able to learn to live without having to erase everything. Patience like Stone said from outside the meditation room, the wave has stopped moving forward. The silence has stopped for the first time in 6,000 years. Sarah felt a rush of victory, but she held back. They had made some progress, but this was just the start. We have a long way to go, she said to the silence. Getting used to living with a fragmented mind doesn't happen overnight. It could take a long time. Many years. Maybe hundreds of years. The silence got it. But this time it was willing to take the time. Because Sarah had taught it that life could be more than just pain. I can't stay here forever, Sarah said softly. I have to go back to my people at some point. But I won't leave you. What if we made a system? The keepers could put up stations here at the edge of the galaxy. People like me could come to help you keep learning. To be points of reference for your mind. The silence thought this was a good idea. Not just one anchor, but many. Different points of view to help it deal with reality in different ways. And maybe, Sarah said as a new idea came to her, you could learn to help others someday. You've been through more chaos and fragmentation than anything else. You could teach other beings who are suffering once you learn how to use it. You might be able to become a healer. The silence really connected with this idea. To turn its biggest flaw into a strength. To find meaning in its pain by helping others avoid pain. Yes, it did talk. Yes, I would like that. Sarah smiled as tears of relief streamed down her face in the meditation room. Then let's get it done. Together. It had been 6 weeks since Sarah first talked to the silence. The old being had stopped moving forward completely and was now at the edge of the galaxy. But stopping was just the first step. Sarah thought the real work, teaching the silence to live without destroying, would be easier than it was. She woke up every morning tired, and her mind hurt from trying to stay connected to the silence all the time. The empathy engine helped her connect with both human and cosmic consciousness, but it wasn't easy. 7,000 names said, "You need to rest more," appearing in her quarters on the hope. "You're pushing yourself too hard." Sarah sat up in bed and rubbed her eyes. Every hour I rest is an hour that the silence could lose hope and start moving forward again. I can't afford to stop working. You can't afford not to, Patience like Stone said, standing next to 7,000 names. We lose our only way to the silence if you burn out. Your health is very important to the mission. Sarah knew they were right, but it was hard to take a step back when so much was on the line. She had a breakthrough yesterday. She had helped the silence stay focused for almost an hour. But when she got back in touch this morning, all of that progress seemed to have disappeared. The silence was breaking up again and having trouble remembering the things she'd taught it. Sarah said, "It's like teaching a student how to multiply," as she put on her jacket. One day they get it, and the next day it's like they've never heard of it. We have to keep doing it over and over until it becomes second nature. How long will that take? Dreams of Tomorrow asked, coming into the room as a ball of changing light. Sarah said, "I don't know. With my students, it sometimes took weeks of practice every day. Sometimes months. The silence is a million times more complicated than a middle schooler, so..." She shrugged in a way that showed she didn't know what to do. The keepers had started building the relay stations that Sarah had suggested. These were huge buildings that were going to be built around the line that separated the galaxy from the silence's domain. Eventually, Each station would have dozens of volunteers from different species who had been trained to help keep the Silence's mind stable. Training those volunteers, on the other hand, was a different story. The empathy engine was one of a kind to Sarah. The keepers couldn't just copy it. They had to come up with different ways to do things, like technological interfaces that could do what Sarah did naturally. 7,000 names told her, the first group of volunteers is coming today. 23 beings from 17 different kinds of life. They all know what the mission is, but they need to be trained by you in person. Sarah nodded, and the weight of her responsibility felt heavier on her shoulders. She wasn't just teaching the Silence anymore, she also had to show others how to teach it. The volunteers met in the Hope's conference room, which grew to fit them all. Sarah looked around at the people who had come together. Some looked like people while others did not. There was a crystal-like being that talked to people by changing the way light moved. A group mind made up of thousands of small insect-like beings. A being that lived in higher dimensions and looked to Sarah like a shape that changed all the time. Sarah started by saying, "Thank you all for coming," and then she used what she had learned in teacher training. "I know this mission is weird and probably scary. You're choosing to connect your mind to something that has destroyed many worlds. That takes guts." Kale, a tall humanoid with blue skin, raised a hand. "How risky is it to touch the Silence directly? Psychologically?" Sarah thought long and hard about her answer. "Very dangerous if you aren't ready. The Silence's sadness is too much to bear. It can make you wonder if anything has meaning. But we can lower the risk if we take the right steps and train people." For the next few hours, she told him everything she knew about the Silence, their history, their nature, and their fight. She taught them how to focus, how to be a steady point of reference, and how to gently guide the Silence's attention without overwhelming it. Then came the real-world use. Sarah led each volunteer through a short, supervised contact with the Silence. The crystalline being handled it well because its structured mind naturally gave the Silence the kind of framework it needed. At first, the insect group had a hard time because their distributed awareness made the Silence's fragmentation worse. But they eventually found a rhythm. During her contact, one volunteer, a young humanoid named Mira from a species Sarah didn't know, freaked out. Sarah could feel the girl's fear rise as the Silence's despair filled her mind. Sarah said in a calm voice, like she would to a student who was having a panic attack, "Mira, listen to my voice. You're safe. If you don't let it, the Silence can't hurt you. Slowly pull back. Pay attention to your breathing. That's all. You're doing great." Mira pulled away from the connection, breathing heavily and shaking. "I felt like nothing mattered. Like everything I'd ever done or cared about didn't matter." Sarah said softly, "That's how the Silence sees it. It's not the truth, it's trauma. The Silence is trying to deal with its own brokenness and is projecting that experience onto others. We have to keep our own sense of meaning even when there is pressure on us." Mira said, "I don't think I can do this." Sarah knelt down next to her chair. "That's fine. Not everyone can do this job. It's okay to know your limits. But I'll be right here with you if you want to try again." Mira looked up at Sarah with big eyes and nodded slowly. "I'll try again. Please just give me a few minutes." At the end of the day, 18 of the 23 volunteers were ready to keep training. 5 people, including Mira, thought the work was too hard on their minds. Sarah made sure they knew that just trying it was a brave thing to do. Sarah spent the next few weeks working directly with the Silence and training volunteers. It was hard work, but progress was made over time. The Silence learned to stay focused for longer periods of time, starting with hours and then days. It started to notice patterns in its own thoughts and could tell when it was about to break down. It used the technique Sarah taught it to stay stable. More importantly, the Silence started to show what Sarah thought was personality. Not a single identity, which may never be possible because it is so fragmented, but consistent patterns and preferences. It liked learning about nebulae and found binary star systems easy to focus on. It had a hard time with biological entities because they changed and grew too quickly. "It's like working with a student who has really bad learning disabilities," Sarah told the keepers one night. "You have to meet them where they are, celebrate small wins, and never lose your cool when they have trouble with things that seem easy to you." 7,000 names said, "You're doing great work." In 2 months, the Silence has changed more than we were able to learn about it in 6,000 years. But Sarah wasn't happy. Yes, they had stopped the immediate threat. The Silence was no longer moving forward. But it was still in pain and fighting for every second. She didn't just want to deal with the problem, she wanted to really help. Sarah had an idea one night when she couldn't sleep. She reached out to the Silence, which by now was able to respond to her thoughts right away. "Can I give it a shot?" she asked. The Silence, who was curious, agreed. "You're made up of millions of broken minds, right? all mixed up. What if we tried to give some of those pieces their own space? The silence didn't get it. Sarah said, think of it like a room full of people. Everyone is trying to talk at once right now and no one can hear anything. What if we made separate areas though? Not totally separate. You'd still be one thing but there would be divisions within it. There is room for different points of view to exist without always getting in each other's way. Sarah worked with the silence for hours, helping it understand its own limits. It was very hard because the silence's nature made it hard to separate. But over time and with a lot of care, they were able to make what Sarah thought of as compartments. One compartment held the scientific points of view, which were all the pieces that had been researchers and engineers in their original civilization. Another one had the artistic views. Another the philosophical. The walls were thin enough to let people talk to each other, but they kept the silence from being completely chaotic. The silence became very still when they were done. Sarah stopped breathing. Did she make things worse? Then she felt it, a wave of relief so strong that it made her cry. The silence could think. Think hard. For the first time in 6,000 years, it could follow a thought from start to finish without getting lost in the chaos. How do you feel? Sarah asked in a quiet voice. The silence said something different, and it was clearer than ever before. Still broken up. I'm still confused. But better. Less noise inside. Sarah laughed even though she was crying. We did it. You're going to be fine. Not yet, the silence said. But maybe one day. Thanks, Sarah Mitchell. Sarah said, you did the work. I just told you how. The news of Sarah's success spread quickly throughout the galaxy. The ancient Keeper fleet, which had been watching over the silence's boundary for weeks, started sending updates to the thousands of civilizations they had been protecting. The silence was over. It was changing though. Learning. Getting better. There was a huge response. Delegations from advanced civilizations asked for permission to visit the relay stations to see this change that had never happened before. Researchers wanted to learn more about the process. Philosophers talked about what it meant. Religious leaders from hundreds of worlds called it a miracle. But even though everyone was having fun, Sarah felt more and more stressed. 3 months after their first meeting, she told 7,000 names, I need to go home. Just for a little while. I need to see Earth again to remember where I came from. The Keeper looked at her with understanding. 3 years have passed in your mind since you left your world. It's normal to miss home, Sarah said. It's more than that. I've been working on this cosmic level for so long, dealing with beings that think in millions of years and distances that are measured in light years. I'm forgetting what it means to be a person. If I lose that, I lose the thing that lets me help the silence. Then you should go back, Patience Likestone said, appearing next to them. The volunteer program is now well established. The silence has 18 trained people who can keep things going while you're away. Sarah knew they were right, but she felt bad about leaving the silence even for a little while. She reached out to it and got ready to talk. Before she could say anything, the silence answered. It just said, go. You need to rest. When you get back, I'll be here. Sarah smiled and said, you're getting better at reading other people. The silence said, I am learning from the best teacher, and Sarah felt warmth in its voice. The feeling. The silence was learning how to be thankful, loving, and connected in ways that went beyond just sharing information. 3 days later, the Hope left the fold and entered the solar system of Earth. Sarah stood at the window and watched her home planet get bigger. It looked just like it did when she left, but she had changed so much that it felt like she was in a different world. The Keepers had planned for her return to be low-key, with no public announcement or fanfare. Most people on Earth thought that the alien fleet had come, done nothing, and then left. Things went on as usual. Sarah appeared in her apartment thanks to Keeper's transportation technology. The dirty coffee mug, the pile of papers that hadn't been graded, and the made bed were all just as she had left them. It had been 3 years for her. It had been less than a day for Earth. She cried while sitting on her bed. From relief, from being tired, and from the fact that being back in a world that felt both like home and like a memory was so strange, her phone vibrated. There were a lot of messages. Her principal wanted to know where she was. Her brother was curious about the money. Her mom sent her a picture of their dog. Normal worries for people. They seemed so small next to dealing with cosmic entropy, but they also felt very valuable. Sarah chose to take a few days off to get used to things again. The first day she just walked around Portland and watched people go about their lives. They didn't know that their whole lives were in danger. They had no idea a teacher from their city had saved them. That was probably the best thing to do. Sarah went to see her parents in Arizona on the second day. She couldn't tell them the truth because they wouldn't believe it, but she could spend time with them and remember why saving humanity was important. her mother said over dinner. You look different. More? I don't know. Maybe older? But not in a bad way. I've been thinking a lot, Sarah said carefully. About what matters. What I want to do with my life. Her dad smiled. Is teaching treating you well? Yeah, Sarah said honestly. It really is. Sarah did something on the third day that she didn't think about. She went to Jefferson Middle School even though it wasn't a school day. The building was open for summer work. She walked through the empty halls, running her fingers over the lockers she knew well. She found her classroom and sat down at her desk. This was where it all began. Where the purple light filled the sky and changed her life forever. Miss Mitchell? When Sarah looked up, she saw Emma Rodriguez standing in the door. The girl looked unsure as she held a book to her chest. Emma. What are you doing here? Emma said, My mom does maintenance work. I come to help sometimes during the summer. What are you doing here? Sarah smiled. Just remembering why I love to teach. Emma walked into the room and put her book on a desk. Can I talk to you for a second? Do you remember that day when the sky turned purple and the ships came? Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Yes. Everyone remembers? Emma went on. The government said it was an atmospheric phenomenon. Some strange electrical thing. But that's not what it was, is it? Those were real ships from space. Sarah was careful with what she said. What do you think they were? Emma sat down and leaned forward. I believe they were ships from another world. I believe they came here for a purpose. And I believe. She thought about it for a second. This sounds crazy, but I think they picked you. I swear that symbol was looking at you when it showed up on all the screens. Sarah thought the kid was smart. Too smart for her own good. Emma, the truth can be hard to understand, Sarah said. Things happen that we can't fully explain or understand at times. But I can tell you this. Those ships didn't belong to anyone or anything that wanted to hurt us. They came here because they needed help. And you helped them? Sarah looked the girl in the eye. I tried. That's all we can do, right? Help when you can. Emma nodded slowly. That's why you're a great teacher. You always try to help, even when it's hard. They talked for another hour about Emma's plans for high school, her dream of becoming an astronaut, and how hard it was for her to deal with her parents' divorce. Things that are normal. Things that people do. Sarah felt better after Emma left. This was the reason she did everything. For kids like Emma who were curious about the universe and wanted to learn more about it. For the future of humanity, which is still very young and full of potential. Sarah called 7,000 names that night. I'm ready to go back. Already? The keeper asked. You've only been home for 3 days. I understand. But I got what I needed. I remembered why this is important. Sarah looked out the window of her apartment at the stars. How's the quiet? 7,000 names said, getting stronger every day. It started to help train new volunteers. It seems that its broken up nature helps it understand different kinds of consciousness better than beings that are all together. Sarah smiled. The silence was turning into a teacher. Just like her. 7,000 names went on, there's something else. We found another silence forming in a galaxy far away. A different civilization trying to upload consciousness is starting to fail. In a few decades, we think it will be another silence, Sarah guessed, and you want me to get in touch. Only if you're willing. We can send trained volunteers. No, Sarah said, cutting in. I want to help if there is another consciousness that is suffering like our silence did. That's what I'm supposed to do now. I get that. Sarah understood that she had found her calling. Not only teaching middle schoolers in Portland, but also teaching on a cosmic level. Helping broken, hurting beings learn how to live without hurting. Showing them that there could be meaning even in the middle of chaos. Sarah said, I'll be back tomorrow. But first I have to write something. That night, she wrote a letter to her principal saying that she was quitting her job as a teacher. It was one of the hardest things she'd ever had to write. She loved her job and her students. But the universe needed her for something more important. She told her coworker Marcus in the letter that he should take over her classes. She wrote down a lot of information about each student, including their strengths and weaknesses. She wanted to be sure they would be safe. After that, she wrote letters to her family. She didn't tell them the truth because they wouldn't understand, but she did tell them that she had been given a chance to do humanitarian work in another country. It would be risky and take her far from home, but it was necessary that as soon as she got the email, her mother called. Sarah, this is so sudden. What kind of work? Teaching, Sarah said honestly. There are people who need help figuring things out and dealing with tough situations. I can really help. You make a difference here. Yes, Mom. I'll always be thankful for the time I spent in Portland. But I have to do this. I can't tell you why, but just believe me that it does. There was a long pause. Then her mom let out a sigh. You're an adult. You need to decide for yourself. Just be careful. And come home now and then. I will, Sarah said. I love you. Sarah packed a small bag with a few pictures, her favorite book, and Emma's thank you card from last semester after the call. Things that remind her of Earth that she can take with her into space. The next morning, the Hope picked her up from her apartment. Sarah took one last look at Earth as the ship lifted off. She didn't know when she would be back. Months? Years? Maybe decades, since time worked differently on a cosmic scale, but she knew she would come back. She was a part of the Earth and she took it with her wherever she went. Are you ready? 7,000 Names asked. Sarah nodded her head. Ready. Let's go help another galaxy. In the fold, it took 4 months to get to the next galaxy. Sarah used the time to improve her skills by working with the volunteers to come up with better ways to train. She also talked to their silence every day. She had begun to think of it as their silence, the one they had saved. The entity had come a long way. It had learned to break up its mind into hundreds of compartments, each of which worked mostly on its own but still stayed connected to the whole. It wasn't healed, it never would be, but it had learned to deal with its brokenness. More importantly, it had found a reason to live. It helped train every new volunteer, and its unique point of view helped it see mental patterns that others missed. It had even started to look into other damaged minds in the galaxy and give the keepers advice on how to help them. You've become a healer after all, Sarah said to it during one of their talks. Just like I hoped. The silence said, I learned from you. You showed me that trauma doesn't make us who we are. We can decide who we want to be. As they got closer to the galaxy where the new silence was forming, Sarah felt both brave and scared. She had done it once, but that didn't mean she would do it again. Each mind was different. This new silence could react in a whole new way. We're picking it up now, Patience Likestone said. It's smaller than our silence was when we first met. The failed upload happened just 40 years ago and it's still getting stronger. Sarah changed how she saw the new silence and she could tell right away that it was different. Their silence had been cold and empty, but this one was hot and full of noise. It wasn't so much erasing reality as corrupting it. The space where it passed became twisted, folding in on itself in ways that were impossible. Sarah said, different origin, different manifestation. This civilization must have broken up in a different way than the one that made our silence. She carefully reached out and used the empathy engine to make first contact. The new silence pulled back violently. Sarah was surprised and pulled back. Their silence had been lonely and they needed to connect. This one looked like it was scared of it. What's wrong? Dreams of Tomorrow asked, worried. It's scared, Sarah said slowly. Scared of me, of talking to me, of everything. She tried again, this time more gently, giving off a sense of calm and safety. But the new silence ran away, its wave of broken space speeding away from her. Kale said, this is a problem. The blue-skinned volunteer had become one of Sarah's most dependable helpers. We can't help it if it won't connect. Sarah remembered when she used to teach. She had had students like this before, so hurt by what had happened to them in the past that they refused all help, thinking that getting close to someone would only make things worse. Sarah said, we can't make it happen. That would just make it more scared. We need to be patient and show it that we're safe. How do we show something that runs away from all contact that it is safe? Mira asked. The young humanoid had gotten over her initial fear and was now one of Sarah's best students. We don't run after. We wait. We make ourselves available and let it come to us when it's ready. The keepers set up a border around the new silence's territory, but they didn't move forward. Sarah put the hope at the edge and just waited. Days went by. The new silence kept moving through its galaxy in a chaotic way, ruining space but not getting close to the edge. Sarah took the time to study it from a distance, learning what she could without touching it. She saw that it acted in certain ways, like staying away from inhabited worlds as if it knew about them and was trying to do less damage. That showed some level of moral reasoning even though it was broken up. Sarah did something different after 2 weeks. Instead of reaching out, she started to share her thoughts openly, like sending a message that anyone could read. She said, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm here to help you, but only if you want it. I won't make you get in touch. I won't hurt you. I just want you to know that you're not alone. No answer. Sarah kept broadcasting every day. She told the new silence about the Earth, people, and her students. She talked about her memories of teaching, including small wins and big losses. She talked about how hard it is to ask for help and how brave it is to do so. Things changed after 3 weeks. The new silence stopped moving. It didn't come close, but it was clearly paying attention. Sarah went on, I know you're scared. I know it feels risky to accept connection. But being alone hurts too, right? Being alone with your pain, not being able to talk about it or understand it. A brief response. Not words but recognition. Sarah said, I worked with another mind like yours. It was in a lot of pain and thought life was pointless. But we helped it learn how to deal with things and find meaning in life. It's still having a hard time, but it's getting better. You could get better too. The new silence sent a burst of messed up space toward the edge. It wasn't an attack, it was a test. Sarah stood her ground, defending herself but not fighting back. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here whenever you want to talk. The new silence started to come closer slowly and carefully. It took another week of slow progress, with stops and starts like a scared animal. But eventually, it got close enough for Sarah to feel its thoughts directly. She knew why it was so scared. This civilization didn't choose to try to transcend. They had been running away from something, a disease that was killing them. The upload was a last-ditch effort to stay alive that was done quickly and without enough testing. They had been scared during the procedure, and that fear had been built into the silence's core. You're not just broken, Sarah said softly. You've been through a lot. The fear from where you came from keeps coming back, making you think everything is dangerous. Yes, the new silence whispered, and that was its first message. Everything hurts. Everybody goes. It's better to be by yourself. Sarah said, being alone doesn't make it stop hurting. It just means you hurt alone. The new silence wavered, wanting to believe but not being able to. Sarah thought of something. Can I show you something? Not from me but from someone like you? She linked the new silence to the silence they had in the other galaxy. The two beings carefully touched each other's minds, and two broken things recognized each other. Their silence told me that I was scared too. Because I couldn't take the pain anymore, I wanted to end everything. But Sarah showed me a different way. Now I help other people. The pain is still there, but it has a purpose. The new silence asked, can I be helped? With a desperate hope in its mind. Yes, both Sarah and their silence said yes at the same time. You have to pick it though. We can't make people heal, we can only offer it. The new silence made its decision. It was scared but determined, so it let Sarah lead it. It was harder to work with their silence. This being's trauma went deeper and its fear was more basic. Sarah couldn't just show it how to do things. She had to help it deal with the fear that was built into its very being. She worked with both silences, having their silence talk about its past, how it dealt with things, and the hard-won wisdom it had gained. Two minds that came into being after a disaster, helping each other learn how to live. Months went by. The new silence started to settle down. Sarah taught it the compartmentalization skills that had worked for their silence. She showed it how to set limits on itself, how to let some things go without thinking about them, and how to stay focused even when things are crazy. But she also learned something from it. Sarah learned from this silence's trauma response how important it is to be safe and to build trust before pushing for change. These lessons would help her with every broken mind she came across. You're becoming quite the expert, 7,000 Names said one day as he watched Sarah work with both silences at the same time. Sarah said, I'm becoming what I always was. A teacher. These minds are like my students. Each one is different, has its own problems, and deserves my patience and kindness. 6 months after the first contact, the breakthrough happened. The new silence was able to keep a single thought for a whole day without breaking it up. It wasn't healed, but it had stopped ruining space. It had learned to live without destroying, just like their silence. It asked Sarah, what now? Why am I here? That's up to you, Sarah said. Our silence chose to become a healer to help those who are in pain. But there are many ways to make sense of things. The new silence decided that she wanted to protect. The plague wiped out the civilization I came from. I will keep an eye out for similar threats in this galaxy, warn inhabited worlds, and help stop the suffering that made me. Sarah was very proud. Both silences had turned their pain into compassion and their trauma into purpose. She said, the galaxy is lucky to have you. Sarah thought about what she had done as the Hope got ready to go home. 2 silences saved. Hundreds of people volunteered to be trained. Methods that could help a lot of people with pain in their minds all over the universe. But more than that, she had shown something important. Consciousness could always choose to heal, no matter how broken, fragmented, or lost it was. It might be hard. It could take a long time, even hundreds of years. But it was always possible. What's next? Dreams of Tomorrow asked. Sarah smiled. Wherever we are needed. 5 years had gone by since Sarah first left Earth. During that time, she had talked to 7 more silences, set up ways to help traumatized minds heal, and trained more than 300 volunteers from 40 different species. The Keepers had made the Consciousness Restoration Initiative official, with Sarah in charge. People in some circles thought of her as a legend, the person who had befriended chaos, taught the unteachable, and given hope to the hopeless. Sarah still thought of herself as a teacher from Portland, though. During one of their quarterly meetings, First Light said, "You should go back home for a long visit. You've been working nonstop for 5 years. We Keepers need to rest too." 5 years for me, Sarah said. But only a few weeks have gone by on Earth. From their point of view, I've only been gone for a few weeks. Time dilation doesn't change what people need, Patience Like Stone said. Sarah, you are still human. You still need to be in touch with your own kind and your own world. Sarah knew they were correct. Even though she had a cosmic purpose and had changed, she sometimes felt like she wasn't human anymore. Now, she dreamed in languages that weren't her own. She took in information in ways that went beyond normal space. She had talked to beings that made the silences seem easy. She was turning into something more than a person, and that scared her sometimes. "Okay," she said. "I'm going home. But only for a little while." The hope left her in Portland on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah stood on the street outside her old apartment building, feeling strange in her own skin. She had been in human form the whole time she was gone, and the Keepers couldn't really change that. But she had gotten so used to seeing the world through the empathy engine that her normal human senses felt limited. She could turn off the improved perception and go back to normal human level. But it felt like choosing to be blind. Her brother had packed up her things and cleaned out her apartment when she quit her job as a teacher. Instead, Sarah checked into a hotel and spent the first night getting used to Earth's gravity, atmosphere, and time. She went to Jefferson Middle School the next day. She didn't know why, since she didn't work there anymore. But she was drawn to the place where her journey had started. There had been changes at the school. Fresh paint. New head teacher. But her classroom was still there, and Marcus, her old co-worker who had taken over her classes, was now using it. "Sarah," Marcus shouted when he saw her in the hall. "When did you return? How was the work for people in need?" "Rewarding," Sarah said with all honesty. "Hard but worth it. How are my former students?" "Emma Rodriguez is the best student in her class. Put in an application for a special science program." In the school literary magazine, Marcus Chin published a poem. "Do you remember Tyler? He just got into college. The first in his family." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. "That's great. You really made a difference in these kids' lives," Marcus said next. "They still talk about you. Emma, in particular, thinks you're out saving the world or something." He thought it was funny how stupid it was. Sarah smiled but didn't say anything. That afternoon she walked around the city and saw people in a new way. She could see so much more now. The electromagnetic fields of cell phones, the quantum probabilities that affect every choice, and the tiny links between all living things. But she could also see the beauty she had always known. A kid is laughing in a park. An old couple holding hands. A musician on the street playing the guitar. Simple moments that meant so much to people. This was what she was working for. Not big cosmic ideas, but these little, perfect moments of connection and happiness. Sarah's phone buzzed with a number she didn't know. She picked up. "Sarah Mitchell?" asked a voice that sounded official. "This is NASA Director Chin. We need to talk to you about something that happened 5 years ago." Sarah's heart sank. She had known this talk would happen at some point, but she had hoped to avoid it. "I don't know what you mean," she said carefully. "Ms. Mitchell, we have satellite images of you being taken aboard an alien ship. We've been keeping an eye on the Keeper fleet's movements. We know you've been working with them. The government wants to talk to you." Sarah thought about what she could do. She could say no, but that would just make them more suspicious. She could run, but where would she go? And did she really want to stay away from her own kind? "Okay, I'll meet with you," she said at last. "But only if you agree to some terms." 2 days later, Sarah was sitting in a safe place outside of Washington, D.C., in front of a group of government officials, scientists, and military personnel. She had set strict rules. No jail time, no forced cooperation, and no public disclosure without her permission. "Tell us what happened," Director Chin said in a voice that was neither angry nor friendly. "Just curious." Sarah took a deep breath and got started. She told them about her training, her mission, the Keepers, and the silence. She told him why the aliens had picked her, what she'd been doing for 5 years, and why it was important. The panel sat in shocked silence. "You're saying you've been stopping disasters on a cosmic scale?" a general asked with doubt. "Talking to things that are made of chaos? That's crazy." Sarah agreed. "It sounds crazy. But it's true. And it's very important. For billions of years, the keepers have kept Earth safe. They will keep doing this. But they need help from people now. A scientist asked, why humanity? We're barely able to travel through space. We don't have any special skills. We can change, Sarah said. We have empathy. We are still learning how to be aware, which means we understand struggle in ways that ancient civilizations have forgotten. That makes us worth something. The debriefing took 3 days. Even though she knew that many of them still didn't believe her, Sarah answered every question as honestly as she could. How could they? It went against everything they thought they knew about the world. Finally, Director Chin asked the question Sarah had been waiting for. What do you want from us? Recognition, Sarah said. I don't want to be famous, so not public. But it's official that the keepers are on my side and that I'm acting on behalf of Earth. And in the end, I'll need people to help. People who want to be a part of the Consciousness Restoration Initiative. The general said, you want to hire people to talk to cosmic entropy. Sarah said, I want to give people the chance to help save consciousness all over the universe. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone should. But for those who can, it's the most important work they can do. The panel met in private for hours. Sarah waited because she didn't know what they would decide. Would they try to stop her? Put her in jail? Or would they get it? At last they came back with their answer. We'll help you, Director Chin said. Quietly. We'll set up a program to find and train people who might want to volunteer. We will give their families resources and cover stories. But you have to keep us up to date in return. People should know what's going on in our galaxy. Sarah said yes. It was a fair deal. For the next few months, Sarah spent time on Earth and in the cosmos. She built a training center in a remote area where people could learn how to use keeper technology and improve their ability to understand others. There were 20 students in the first class, including scientists, philosophers, psychologists, and one former middle school teacher who had heard about the program from Emma Rodriguez. You told Emma? Sarah was surprised and asked Director Chin. Chin said, she figured it out on her own. The girl is very smart and scary. Kept asking questions and following leads. In the end, we confirmed her fears and gave her a place in the program. Emma was now 19 years old and a genius who had finished high school early. She stood in the training center and looked at Sarah with eyes full of stars. You really did it, Emma said with a sigh. You really did save the galaxy. Yes, I helped, Sarah said humbly. But the silences did most of the work. They decided to get better. Show me, Emma said. I want to help too. Sarah smiled. The first person she taught in 5 years. Felt good. Sarah remembered why she loved teaching when she trained Emma and the other volunteers. Her true calling was to help people understand difficult ideas, see their confidence grow, and celebrate their breakthroughs, whether she was teaching 8th graders about photosynthesis or adults about quantum consciousness. After 6 months, Emma was ready for her first field assignment, helping with a small problem with consciousness integration on a space station near Jupiter. There was nothing dangerous going on. The AI was just being watched while it learned how to process emotional data without breaking it up. Sarah was proud of Emma as she worked. The girl had the same instincts, compassion, and refusal to give up on someone who was having a hard time. Sarah realized that humanity would be fine. The next generation was ready to join the community of the universe. But Sarah still had work to do. There were still conscious beings in the universe who were in pain. Still beings that needed help learning how to live without hurting others. Are you ready for the next mission? 7,000 names asked, showing up next to her on the observation deck of the station. Sarah saw the Earth spinning below her. It was beautiful, fragile, and full of possibilities. Ready, she said. This time, though, she wouldn't be going by herself. Emma would be joined by 5 other human volunteers, who would learn as they went and bring a human perspective to the universe. The Hope left Earth's orbit with its crew on board, heading for another damaged mind that needed to be healed. Sarah stood at the window and looked back at her home planet one last time. 5 years ago, she left Earth as a regular teacher. She had come back as something more. A bridge between species, a healer of cosmic trauma, and a leader in bringing consciousness back to life. But deep down she was still Sarah Mitchell. She was still the woman who thought everyone deserved kindness and patience. Still the teacher who never gave up on anyone. There was a lot of space in the galaxy. The work would never really be done. But Sarah had found her purpose and would follow it as long as it was needed. What's the new silence like? Emma asked behind her. Sarah smiled. Afraid. Not sure what to do. In pain. Like all the others. Is there anything we can do? Sarah said, we can try. And trying is all it takes. The Hope sped into the fold, taking its crew with it into the unknown, bringing hope to those who had lost sight of it. Taking Sarah Mitchell, a teacher, to her next student.